Hello, Professor. This is Sherry Davis, and my movie was The Bucket List. The Bucket List was about two gentlemen Carter, who was played by Morgan Freeman, who was African American, and Edward, who was Jack Nicholson, who met each other as roommates in the hospital, both battling cancer. This movie was interesting to me, being in that a middle adult phase of my life where you're reflecting on your life, and especially when you have cancer and you know it's terminal, how you begin to look at your life and what you've done. As I look at this movie, the first part built on Erickson's theory. Each gentleman was in the phase of integrity versus despair. I think Morgan Freeman had this bucket list that, as he wrote down, which he wanted to fulfill, and he knew he had a limited amount of time. And then you had Edward, Jack Nicholson, who was a man who had made a lot of money, but also had made a lot of mistakes, though he felt like he did them for the right reasons, which in this time he's going back in the Valiant perspective and Peck's, where he's reflecting and trying to decide what decision he's make, where Carter is also reflecting on how I'm never going to get this list fulfilled because I know I have a short amount of time. Long story short, each of them decided they wanted to fulfill this. Edward had the money to do it and bankrolled it. At this point, they took this trip, and in taking these trips to these different places, each was able to reflect on their life, but also impart some wisdom and some things to each other to allow each of them to fulfill these goals that they had. I think Edward was able to see some of the things through Carter's eyes in a way that he hadn't before. And then Carter also wanted to reflect on the things that he saw and knew to help Edward in the end mend some fences, which would have been the despair part for him, which disappointed in his relationship with his daughter, where on Carter's end, at one point, not really sure how he felt about his wife, but then realized he really loved his wife and he needed to get back to his wife. And through this period, they were each checking off things. Have a Hearst perspective as they begin to look at their bodies breaking down, having cancer, their physical ability, which had changed, which we both know was going to change. Eventually, one losing their life, the other one going into remission, living a little bit longer. Peck also talks about the ego and the body changes and going through that transition of middle adulthood to both of them being 70 years old and being older. Levinson also talked about the seasons of life. And I think at those later years, you're trying to pass something on to your families, reflect on your life, making sure you've lived it to the best of your ability. In some cases, depressed that you haven't done the things that you were able to do. I really love the movie The Bucket List. I have a bucket list of my own, and I'm slowly checking some things off, but it really makes you look at how Erickson built the foundation and the other theorists built upon it. There's a lot of great things in this movie. 4 to 5 minutes is not enough to talk it through, but just the reflective piece, accepting the changes in our body, physically, mentally. Both of these gentlemen had great mental capacity, one had a great family, began to appreciate it, died before Edward, and Edward was able to mend some fences and look back through his life and accept the limitations, but also probably had the most joy the last several years of his life with his daughter and his granddaughter, and was able to meet some of the things that he needed to meet and to reflect on some things and then do some things to try to make some changes in his life. So Bucket List was a great movie. Carter, played by Morgan Freeman. Edward, played by Jack Nicholson, was great. Again, 5 minutes when you talk about being older and really looking over your life and wishing you could do some things differently, and sometime not, and accepting that maybe I haven't done all that I could have done and that I could have done some things differently. But altogether, great movie. Loved it. And I hope this was what you wanted. Have a great night. Bye.